Economics is often referred to as the dismal science. The term might sound unusual, but here's an interesting story. Back in 1976, a team of Finnish economists embarked on a study to understand the overall effect of smoking on the national economy across 27 years. They followed individuals, some smokers, some non-smokers, and documented their impact on the economy, considering factors such as taxes contributed and expenses related to welfare and medical care. The economists' hypothesis was that smokers would be less economically productive, posing a burden due to increased healthcare needs and lower overall productivity. Surprisingly, the reality was different. On average, smokers lived 8.6 years less than non-smokers. This meant they were less of a strain on publicly funded retirement pensions. The smokers, who were economically active, didn't live long into their retirement, minimizing the period during which they relied heavily on resources and pension funds. On average, smokers had a $133,000 higher net contribution to public finances compared to non-smokers. The twist came when the economists factored in the value of human life, leading to a reversal of results. This study raises a challenging dilemma. While maximizing individual economic output might suggest encouraging smoking, it's clearly an impractical and ridiculous notion. It underscores the complex issue that what benefits an individual may not always align with the greater good of society. Economics, revolving around managing limited resources, necessitates grappling with genuinely life-altering trade-offs. Making the right choice is not always clear-cut. Moreover, it assumes that decision-makers, from leaders to everyday individuals, act logically to maximize positive outcomes, disregarding factors like ideology, personal gain, or ignorance, a sizable assumption acknowledged by many economists. The repercussions of these tough decisions, even made with good intentions, have historically cost billions of lives. This might seem like an exaggeration, but prominent economists, including Nobel laureates, argue otherwise. What's worrisome is that mistakes from the past, stemming from either a lack of economic knowledge or the absence of economics itself, persist today. So, what are the significant economic failures from history that offer valuable lessons? Where are we currently going wrong? And perhaps most importantly, how many lives have been lost due to flawed economic policies? Delving into these questions can make economics a somber subject, revealing the extent of human suffering even with the best intentions. The field of economics is currently facing a significant crisis as an academic discipline. Microeconomists, focusing on small-scale interactions and individual decision-making, have come under scrutiny for falsifying study results to present intriguing findings rather than accurate ones. On the macroeconomic front, debates among macroeconomists have persisted for decades. The challenge lies in the difficulty of conducting meaningful macroeconomic experiments. Macroeconomics, by definition, examines interactions across entire markets, often on a national or global scale. Macroeconomists primarily learn from historical events since running experiments at such a large scale is challenging. Unfortunately, history provides an extensive list of economic mistakes. In 1958, as part of China's efforts to modernize its economy post-World War II, the government, under its new communist system, aimed to boost steel production. The economic theory behind this decision was that steel is a crucial element for developing modern industrial equipment. The economic logic here is that having more steel allows an economy to build more factories, machines, and infrastructure, ultimately increasing total output and resources to be shared. In theory, this isn't wrong, as current global economics show a strong correlation between economic growth and steel consumption. If an economy uses steel-made machines, it can produce more and develop more steel-based products. However, China's approach took a theoretically sound idea, presumably with good intentions to improve the quality of life for everyone, and implemented it with backyard furnaces. Instead of investing in a few high-quality steel smelting plants, the Chinese government encouraged farmers to create basic furnaces from bricks and clay, burning whatever they could find for fuel: wood, tools, and even coffins in some cases. The government's heavy promotion of these backyard furnaces led farmers to prioritize steel production over crop cultivation, to the extent of clearing entire forests surrounding their fields. The government was aware of the situation, but believed that by increasing steel production and hastening industrialization, farmers could transition to using tractors and advanced harvesting tools, significantly boosting agricultural output in the long run. In theory, this isn't a terrible assumption, considering today's highly industrialized farming practices, where a single farmer with a combine harvester can achieve the work of 100 farmers with hand tools in the same time frame. However, the Chinese government overlooked a crucial point. Industrial development leads to more steel production, but simply producing more steel does not automatically result in industrial development, among other factors. The widespread adoption of backyard furnaces played a significant role in triggering the Great Chinese Famine. Starting a year after this industrial push, the famine resulted in the deaths of 15 to 55 million people, a staggering toll comparable to the casualties of every country in World War II combined. This tragedy wasn't a result of violence, but rather poor decision-making. Besides diverting farmers from their primary focus on agriculture, this misguided economic project led to soil erosion, due to extensive tree cutting around fields for furnace fuel. While the concept of millions of workers coming together to produce steel for the nation's common good aligned with party ideologies, the end result was subpar steel, mostly impracticable. A significant portion of this inferior steel had to be reprocessed at a proper steel plant, as it should have been from the outset. In hindsight, decisions like encouraging more people to smoke or persuading farmers in a primarily agrarian country to abandon farming and damage their fields seem clearly misguided. Even with some theoretical economic justification, these ideas were bound to be flawed. Regrettably, there's no shortage of historical lessons like these, spanning the past century, and this doesn't even touch on instances where economics is intentionally wielded as a weapon to subdue populations or entire nations, such as through trade restrictions and sanctions. In some cases, the ends might be seen as justifying the means, with economic hostilities preferred over military conflicts. However, casualties still occur. The challenge intensifies when focusing solely on policies aimed at benefiting economic participants, especially in the absence of hindsight. Relying on untested theories to determine the greater good makes it particularly difficult. Recognizing that economics goes beyond simply maximizing individual wealth is crucial. It's a discipline that profoundly affects everyone globally, in ways that are often more impactful than other fields like chemistry and physics, which may get Hollywood movies dedicated to them. This emphasizes the need to approach economic policies seriously and comprehend the essence of economic success. While it may sound somewhat philosophical, that might be the crux. Currently, there's an ongoing debate among some of the greatest minds in the economics profession regarding the role of a good economist. On one side of the debate, some argue that economics is a science like any other, and all actions should undergo rigorous experimentation and be subservient to the data. In this view, economists should advocate for policies that maximize measurable outcomes, such as output, wealth, and human development. According to prominent economists, and more crucially, those shaping policy decisions globally, a data-backed and somewhat clinical approach to economics has been the predominant method for effectively managing the planet over the past 4 decades. This trend has been facilitated by the ease of collecting and analyzing economic data with the advent of computers. Leveraging data and rigorous analysis helps eliminate much of the emotion and, importantly, ideology from the economic process. It provides leaders with a roadmap on how to maximize measurable outcomes, reducing the chance for catastrophic economic mistakes driven by personal beliefs. However, despite the advantages of the scientific method, there are inherent challenges that prompt economists to argue for a more philosophical foundation in conducting economics. One glaring issue is that policymakers don't always adhere to the advice given by economic advisors. Additionally, overly technical ideas can be challenging to communicate to the general public, who, in a well-functioning democracy, should be the ultimate decision-makers. At times, a good enough idea that can actually be implemented is more valuable than a perfect economic plan that may never see consideration. There's also the challenge of applying very rigid statistics to a fundamentally human-focused science. If an economist solely focuses on maximizing measurable outcomes, their approach to the trolley problem might involve running over the single person tied to the tracks and then reversing to run over the second group, perhaps because it eliminates 6 economically dependent individuals and doubles the time worked for the tram driver. While this may sound dramatic, there are indeed solutions supported by modern economic theories that align with this analogy, but we'll delve into that later. Another significant issue with treating economics, especially at a macro scale, like other sciences, is the difficulty, or in many cases, the impossibility, of running experiments on an economy. The economic landscape is filled with millions of unpredictable variables that cannot be controlled, as in a sterile lab experiment. Economists sometimes assume people are perfectly rational, but in reality, human behavior is far from it. Furthermore, an overly data-driven approach to economic decision-making tends to prioritize improvements that are easily measurable, neglecting intangible factors like human fulfillment and happiness. While these may be challenging to quantify, they are arguably more important than metrics like net output per capita. An alternative to this cold-hearted, data-driven approach is to have economists take on a more philosophical role, making judgments about what people truly value and determining the best means to achieve those goals. Angus Deaton, who won the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences in 2015 for his work on the role of economic consumption in human welfare, has proposed an alternative approach to studying economics. His subsequent works, including the book Economics in America, suggest a shift away from the current methodology employed by modern economists. Angus Deaton's arguments gain particular relevance in one of, if not the most significant economic issues being debated today: globalization. Globalization is the general trend of countries trading, investing, and cooperating more freely with each other, rather than being entirely self-sufficient. Similar to how individuals are wealthier today by collaborating with others and specializing in different tasks, countries reap similar benefits by specializing in specific fields and trading with others to obtain goods and services they may not excel in producing. By almost any measurable economic metric, globalization has been a massive force for good in the global economy. It has provided opportunities for countries like China, South Korea, Taiwan, and India to lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and develop world-leading industries. It has also enabled traditionally wealthy economies such as the USA, Australia, Canada, and Western Europe to enjoy consumer goods at a price much lower than what they would cost, with local manufacturing employing higher-paid domestic workers. Globalization has transformed appliances, once considered luxuries like washing machines, vacuum cleaners, and enormous flat-screen televisions, into commonplace items in households across advanced economies. Companies, especially in advanced economies like the USA, have reaped significant benefits not only by taking advantage of lower wages and economies of scale in places like Asia, but also by gaining access to hundreds of new markets and billions of potential customers. Measurably, it has been a win-win for many, but the distribution of benefits has been uneven. Average workers, now indirectly competing for jobs with individuals in countries with a much lower cost of living, have often been left behind. Moreover, in advanced economies, the wealth generated from global industries has led to some incidental items becoming cheaper, while crucial things like housing, in particular, have become much more expensive. A distinct class divide has emerged, with highly paid workers, investors, and global citizens who have profited from organizations flourishing due to global trade forming an almost exclusive group. Regular economic participants engaged in standard jobs, contributing value primarily to the local domestic economy, find it challenging to compete. The value they can add with their work is limited, and given that their employers aim for profitability, they cannot generate more value than they contribute for any given amount of work. This contrasts sharply with individuals working in fields such as technology design, trade route management for an import business, or even content creation for a global audience on platforms like YouTube, where the potential for added value transcends local boundaries. The second group, though contributing less to their local economy, adds more value to the global economy, allowing them to sustainably earn more and outcompete individuals working in regular jobs for limited resources, like housing. This challenging-to-measure issue has tangible human consequences. In the USA, the life expectancy gap between university graduates and those without a bachelor's degree has more than tripled from 2.6 years in 1992 to 8.5 years in 2021. Angus Deaton's work asserts that modern economics, which has advocated for globalization, has fundamentally failed to comprehend the immeasurable consequences of such a radical change. Notably, there's a statistic highlighting that for every 1% increase in unemployment in the USA, 40,000 people die. Deaton, alongside a growing group of economists, has drawn similar connections, attributing societal problems like the opioid epidemic and mass homelessness to economic policies that may appear sound on paper but inflict significant harm in practice. The solution is indeed challenging. Relying solely on numbers in economics might lead to scenarios where the government encourages smoking to reduce the burden on retirement welfare. On the other hand, if economics becomes purely philosophical or, worse yet, political, we risk situations similar to backyard furnaces fueling the growth of collectivized heavy industry. As a thought experiment on a scale we encounter in our everyday lives, consider this scenario. Someone has just finished a meal at a fast food restaurant, and their table is covered in disposable food wrappers. Should they, or should they not, take their own trash and put it in the bins? If they don't, the restaurant will need to pay someone to clean up the trash, which boosts employment. But if they do, they make the lives of the workers there easier, potentially at the expense of the company. This simple example illustrates the complexities of economic decision-making at both individual and societal levels. If you're interested in a refresher on economic fundamentals or related issues, we've compiled them into a playlist that should be accessible on your screen now. Thanks for watching. Bye.